Hello, my name is Jeremy.
And my name is Aubrie.
And welcome back to the Technical Difficulties Podcast. All right, well, welcome back. This is episode number 2 of the Technical Difficulties Podcast. So, especially if you listen to that train wreck of a first episode, thank you so much for coming back. And we've watched a whole new crop of movies, not quite as many as we watched last time we were recording, but yeah, we've been watching some fun stuff.
Yeah, we've been trying to do a challenge of horror in love. That's kind of been our theme for the movies we've watched this month.
Kind of, or at least movies that in our heads we thought were kind of more love stories. And I think a lot of them that we watched, it turns out maybe they're not quite as cute, romantic, fun love stories as maybe we remembered them being. But yeah, we still watched a bunch of kind of fucked up, weird horror love stories and some kind of Valentine's Day horror movies that we'll talk about briefly. But there are 3 that we will be talking about quite a bit more than all of the others. So yeah, do you want to list off some of the other stuff we've been watching this month aside from the main stories we're going to get into?
Yeah, we kicked off this month with Bride of Reanimator.
Fuck yeah. I've never seen any of the Bride of Reanimator sequels before, and so I was glad I finally checked it out. I don't remember a ton of stuff about this because it wasn't one of my main focuses of the month, but I know it had like a lot of really fun practical effects courtesy of Screamin' Mad George, and I like that about it. Particularly, there's like the flying head with bat wings.
Yeah,
goofy shit like that. It was a lot of fun.
I liked that one. And then we watched Hospital Massacre, or X-Ray.
Yeah, X-Ray is the Blu-ray we have is what it's called. But yeah, on Letterboxd, it's only on there in Hospital Massacre. And this is like a Valentine's Day kind of themed slasher thing. Like it starts off with these kids, and one kid gives a girl a Valentine, and she's like, she doesn't give a shit, and she's preoccupied with this other kid at school. And that really bums the kid out who gave her the Valentine. And he maybe kills the other boy and maybe or maybe not grows up and kills a whole lot of other people.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that one too.
Had some out of place music. I do have a note of that. And I remember now it had some like weird, like epic chanting like kind of music that seemed like it should be in like the Omen or something. Aside from like its normal kind of like 80s vibe that it had at other times. And I don't know, directed by an Israeli director, Boaz Davidson, I guess. But yeah, X-Ray, it was all right.
I think this month we ended up with a lot of vampire movies. Like we watched The Hunger.
We did watch The Hunger, David Bowie. And yeah, I've never seen that movie before. And it's I thought David Bowie would be in it more, but it's really kind of more of a story about vampire, the lady vampire, and another lady who she's coercing into her world of vampirism, I guess. But yeah, no, I'm glad I finally watched that.
Yeah, and then we also watched Bram Stoker's Dracula for the second time.
So yeah, we watched Bram Stoker's Dracula couple nights ago, and I've only seen this movie once when I was maybe 19 or 20, so I don't know, almost 20 years ago at this point. And for whatever reason, that movie just really fucking didn't vibe with me the first time I saw it. I don't know why. I just really didn't like it, and I could not have felt more different about it the other day. I actually really, really love it.
Oh, yeah, it definitely slapped.
It slaps. But yeah, I mean, Keanu Reeves is in it, being a little Keanu Reevesy at times. I really like the Anthony Hopkins Van Helsing character in it. I like everything about it. Like it's just like a fucking work of art, and like the way that Dracula sometimes can just be like a green mist, creeping up to the castle. And
I like how the castle kind of looked like a skeleton sitting on a throne.
Yeah.
From the angles that they shot it at.
But yeah, I mean, it's Francis Ford Coppola, so of course it's going to be awesome to look at. But yeah, I thoroughly, legitimately love that movie now. And for whatever reason, I just didn't like it much the first time I've seen it. But that's why I'm glad I give things a second chance, because it happens a lot of times to me where I really don't like a movie and then I watch it again and I definitely like it a lot better. But the opposites also happened too. I've also rewatched other things I've hated and ended up hating them even more, but I'm not going to get into that.
Yeah, that's not for this episode.
But whatever. Yeah, Bram Stoker's Dracula fucking rules. We also watched, courtesy of Joe Bob Briggs and his annual Valentine's Day special he does live on Shudder. We also watched, until we fell asleep at least, but that movie Vamp with Grace Jones.
Oh yeah,
like that movie is fucking crazy and has some really cool like hypnotic sexual artsy strip tease kind of scenes in it, and that was a fun ride as well.
Yeah, I liked that. That was the second movie on the night. It was started by Freeway.
Yeah, and I guess they weren't really going for like, love stories or anything like that as much as like, I guess they wanted to have a movie where they showed that like all women suck, and then another movie that shows that all men suck. And if you want to watch a movie thinking all men suck, Freeway is definitely a good one.
Yeah.
God, that movie's fucked up, actually. I don't know how much I even really like. I like parts of it for sure, but like it's a fucked up kind of ugly movie. And I think there's some unnecessary stuff in it too that I'm not even going to get into right now because that's not our main focus. But some other stuff we watched. We watched the original, the OG, My Bloody Valentine, of course. And I really like that slasher a lot. I've seen it once before. I just love like that it's a slasher set in the mines. Like I just think mines are really fucking cool and a really creepy, cool place to set a horror movie. So
I love the setting. It's one of my favorite parts of the whole thing because mines scare me. I've been in mines a few times on the trips here in Colorado and stuff like that. Elementary school field trips.
Hell yeah. We also, on Valentine's Day, we went to the Sea Film Center and we got to see Picnic at Hanging Rock on 35 millimeter film. And it was really beautiful and stunning to see in 35 millimeter film, because that's the only actual theater in the city of Denver here where we live that actually has film projectors, and all the other theaters are all digital. So I mean, whenever I get to see like a classic movie on actual film, I think it's like a rare treat. And I wish I could say I like the movie better. I think it's okay.
We're torn here because that was my fourth time watching the movie and I like it.
I do like it. It's really, really slow.
It's pretty.
Like, it is very pretty, but it's painfully slow. A friend of ours who we went and saw it with, actually, they said that the story needed a half an hour more, but their brain needed a half an hour less. And that's exactly how I feel about that movie as well.
I don't know. I like it a lot. I think it's a good mystery. You never know exactly what happened.
But yeah, regardless, shout out to Scream Screen and the Sea Film Center and all these cool special events that we go to that, we get to see an actual film print of Picnic at Hanging Rock and other weird ass shit like that. We have a lot of fun doing those events. So
I liked the new movie that we saw this year.
Oh yeah, we did see Lisa Frankenstein.
Yeah, it was so much fun.
It was fun. Written by Diablo Cody, most notably of like, for horror fans, Jennifer's Body, and, kind of broke out with the movie Juno way back in the day. But yeah, Lisa Frankenstein was like a fun, it's set in 1989.
And it's Robin Williams' daughter's film.
It is. Zelda Williams.
She directed it.
So that's a cool collaboration between the two. And it's not like a perfect movie, but I definitely had fun with it. I'm just a sucker for nostalgic retro 80s kind of feeling movies, and it definitely nails that feeling.
Yeah, you get a little bit of Heathers, a little bit of Beetlejuice.
There's a penis chopping scene and a penis sewing on part, which I can always appreciate.
Oh, definitely. That was one of the best parts.
But yeah, go see Lisa Frankenstein. I had a lot of fun with that one. Anything else? I guess. Oh, we did watch Bride of Chucky last night as well. Another movie that I've seen maybe once before when it first came out on video, in 1998 or 99 or whenever I was able to finally get my little greasy, gross kid hands on it at a Blockbuster. But we had actually recently watched the first season of the Chucky TV show.
I'm loving that
and
show.
Jennifer Tilly reprises her role in that, and so it kind of made us want to go back and watch the origins of Charles Lee Ray, aka Chucky, and her love story together. So we watched Bride of Chucky, and it's campy and stupid and very much of its time with lots of crappy new metal kind of music and stuff in it. But I still enjoy it. There's a cool kill in it with nails in front of an airbag that they make go off, and they all go into this guy's head. And then Chucky kind of riffs on, once they see the guy with all the nails sticking out of his head, he makes like a stupid joke about, hey, this guy looks kind of familiar. And they definitely like riff and kind of make fun of some other like slasher franchises in it too. Like right at the very beginning, there's that evidence room, and there's a fucking hockey mask next to a chainsaw, and there's like a straight up Michael Myers mask in there. So it makes some little references to other slasher films, and it's not a great movie, but I do think it's fun.
It was fun to watch, and that's all I'm looking for. I was entertained.
Yeah, but I think that pretty much covers all the other movies that we watched this month, and so we should just get right into it here with our main focus.
I agree.
Touch your skin. I'm pushing up a tough a wall of steel. I'm sticking up a hard feet in the dirt. I'm shoving up a cool a thing to
You're not going to kill me, are you? Look, I understand. Everybody has a bad day now and then. Everyone's entitled to it. But killing people isn't going to solve anything.
All right. So the very first movie we're going to really dive into deeper here today is one I'm very excited to talk about. And it is a British film that was actually directed by a Swedish guy, and the producer of it's Canadian. So it's kind of a worldwide effort of brilliance here, in my opinion. But it is Unmasked Part 25, directed by Anders Palm from 1988 or 89, depending on what you see. I think it actually, like, the very first time anyone saw it, I believe, was in 1988. But then, kind of came out on home video and stuff like that a lot wider in 1989, or at least as wide as this movie got, because this is a pretty criminally underseen movie, in my opinion, especially if you're a fan of the Friday the 13th franchise like we are. Like, you need to see this movie. This movie is a straight up like parody sequel of Friday the 13th, and they don't even try to disguise that.
No, it's a great British comedy. Very much reminds me of a lot of the TV shows that my parents had me watching when I was a kid, and they loved Monty Python, and it has a lot of that feel to it.
It is a very, very British feeling movie. And I guess like the director, even though he was born in Sweden, he was living in London at the time, and his parents were living in London at the time, and they actually like one of the houses, the fancier, nicer house the movie, part of the movie takes place in, I guess was actually his parents' house in London he filmed it at. And then there was actually another like location that they filmed a lot of these scenes at that was
it was an abandoned property, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it was torn down like right after this movie too, so it doesn't exist. And I think that's like the where all the kills and stuff are happening in the beginning of the movie.
It's really well painted in there. I didn't realize that it wasn't something that they did for the movie.
Yeah, and so the first 15 minutes of this movie is basically like it's just like a fast-tracked Friday the 13th movie. Like, you have these like kind of like artsy punk kind of kids in London that are partying in this weird, I think it's like an abandoned house, but it also has like electricity and stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't know. But like, I mean, the first 15 minutes, like I said, it really is like a full Friday the 13th movie. You're getting these kids are getting naked and having sex and getting killed, and there's kill after very brutal, gory kill too.
My favorite kill.
What's that?
The one where there's a lamp in the corner and they break off the light bulb and they stab it through somebody's head.
Yeah, that scene is fucking gruesome. And I listened to the full director's commentary. We own the Blu-ray of this movie. We bought it. It's the Vinegar Syndrome release, and there's a commentary with the director and also a film journalist. Trying to find his name here, David Flint. And that's where I got a lot of this information from that we're about to talk about, because there really isn't a lot out there about this movie, because it's really very underseen. Like, I think there's only like less than 800 people that have reviewed it on Letterboxd. And I had no idea this movie even existed until about a year ago. And I mean, I've been a pretty big fan of Friday the 13th movies my entire life, but I mean, obviously this is a very unofficial Friday the 13th thing, but it definitely is very heavily inspired and mocking and parodying that franchise.
Yeah, instead of Jason, it is Jackson.
Jackson, yeah, that is his name. And basically the whole premise of this movie is basically just like, what if Jason got tired of killing and he just wanted to live a normal life? He wanted to fall in love. He's really interested in like poetry and theater, and he quotes Byron and like.
Yeah, it's a Shakespearean 80s slasher.
It really. That's the whole premise of this movie, is basically just like Jason's done killing. He thinks it's pointless. He doesn't want to do it anymore. He just wants to live a normal life. And this whole killing spree that we were just talking about at the beginning, at the very end of that killing spree, the last potential victim he runs into is this blind lady. And she cannot see what a monster he is. And he's never really encountered this type of thing before.
Yeah, she thinks that he is this date that she was supposed to have.
That's right, because
she
was expecting a blind date at the party, and then she thought she got stood up. And so by the time Jackson. By the way, the director doing commentary mistakenly calls him Jason several times too, so we don't have to feel too bad about it.
No.
But yes, that's right. She was supposed to have a blind date, and by the time Jackson has got on this killing spree, kind of picking off her friends one by one as they're fornicating in other rooms. And by the way, we do get some dong in this.
Yeah.
I don't think we get hanging dong in any Friday the 13th movie, unless I don't think we do at all.
I don't think so.
But we get hanging dong in Unmasked Part 25.
Hell yeah.
But anyway, after he picks off all of her friends, he comes across this blind lady, and she thinks it's her blind date that has finally arrived. And Jackson decides decides to not kill her and potentially take her on as a romantic partner.
Yeah, they start. She takes him back to her apartment like right away.
Yep.
So, and there's a cool dance scene.
She does a real cool 80s dance.
Oh, it's so cool.
Man, but this movie is wild. Like, I really kind of can't believe it exists, but I'm so fucking happy that it does. And the director's commentary, the director was straight up asked if he was afraid of getting sued or anything like that, and he's just like, no, because you can't copyright all hockey masks. And I mean, they of course they changed his name slightly and all those things, and I guess they never had any pushback on it. But I mean, it's also wasn't like a giant worldwide success of a movie, otherwise maybe they would have.
This one has great music in it too.
Yeah, it has this weird song that you probably heard in actually the clip of the trailer that we put in right before this. But it's this weird song, and it's credited with a couple musicians, but they're pseudonyms. And the director says that like the person who actually wrote it was pretty well known at the time, and he like swore that he would never tell who the actual musicians were. But they're credited as John King and Phil Butcher. But yeah, the director, he still refuses to actually like say who the musician actually was. I don't know if maybe somebody with a much better ear for late 80s, probably British pop rock kind of music maybe could recognize it better than me, but I don't know who it is.
Yeah, I have no idea either.
But anyway, this main character here, Jackson, he does start like he does develop like a relationship with this woman, and it's filled with like some kind of like cheesy montagey like love scenes. Like I love I love them just like sitting on a park bench at sunset, like by the water, and like
any romantic little activity. They're doing all the little date things.
And yeah, it totally is just like a blind lady walking around with this big hulking man like wearing a hockey mask. And there's one point where like they go into a costume store and she tries to buy a hockey mask to wear with him so he feels more normal, but he doesn't really like that.
No, and then he starts just not wearing his mask for a little bit.
He does start, and yeah, he has like, you know, he has a mutilated face, and it looks kind of similar-ish, some aspects of it, like kind of looks similar to the American Jason.
Or the Goonies guy.
But it kind of looks like, yeah. It looks a little like that, too. But, you know, there is this kind of other part of the movie where, like, can Jackson really be this normal, loving person? Or he knows that there's this particular date that is approaching, and when that date comes, and that specific day, and that date comes, he's not going to be able to hold himself back from his normal Friday the 13th shenanigans.
Yeah, and then he goes to see, dun dun dun, his dad.
That's right. So we all know about Jason Voorhees' mother in the Friday the 13th franchise, but this one, our protagonist here, Jackson, we had some new lore. If this really is, you know, connected to the American Friday the 13th franchise, we finally get to meet Jackson's dad in this one, and it turns out he's just like an old British drunk who has always been in England, and he definitely talks about Jackson's time that he spent in America in that swamp or whatever.
It was a lake.
Yeah, Jackson defiantly says it was a lake when he calls it a swamp. I love that so much. But yeah, and it turns out Jackson and his dad are both these crazy kind of immortal serial killers, and they also come from a long line of them. So Jackson's dad, Jackson's granddad, all of them are apparently killers. And according to Jackson's dad, the mother was not from the same kind of line of killers, but was driven crazy by
having a disgusting son.
And I think what they mean by that, unfortunately, is I think, you know, deformed son. And apparently that's what drove Jackson's mother crazy. It wasn't that she was also from the same long line of serial killers, just another thing. But yeah, we get some clunky Friday the 13th lore here that, like, you know, if it really did go on to part 25, as this one is called, then maybe we would have. I have a feeling we probably would have eventually found out about Jason's dad.
Wasn't the real series, the Friday the 13th series, only on its 7th about when this came out?
7 or 8, yeah. Okay. I think this came out like right around the time, like I think it might have been like right before Jason Takes Manhattan. I do think it was like when part 7 I think was out. I did look into this, and I think that's, but like I said, there's also kind of conflicting stories and like details on when this first came out, whether it was 1988 or 89 as well. So, but yeah, the Friday the 13th franchise was definitely still going on, and Jason Takes Manhattan would come out like shortly after this. And this is basically just like Jason Takes London. Yeah. Or as I call it, Jason Fucks in London. Because Jason does fuck in this movie.
Oh, that's right. The BDSM.
There is a BDSM scene with Jackson and his blind lover. That's right. And it has everything you would want. And the funny thing is as much as Jackson loves violence not in
the bedroom.
He hates it in the bedroom. Like, she dresses him up, and he has this little like leather hat on. He has these like
his boxers,
these silk boxers that say "bad boy" on the butt,
and it's badly done. It's not well done.
It's really funny, and he has this weird like kind of
gold chain necklace thing.
Like tank top thing with like ruffly bows and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't even know what's going on, but she tries to get him to whip her, and he feels super uncomfortable about it. Like, I just love how like every aspect in this movie, other than when it's Friday the 13th and he's going on his killing spree, like every other aspect of Jackson's life, he hates violence. Like, there's even a scene where she tries to have him open a bottle of wine with a corkscrew, and he has no idea how to use the corkscrew. He's trying to use like
he can't figure out how to stab it into the cork. He doesn't understand the concept.
He's trying to use like the bottle opener side of it, and he's getting all frustrated, and then he accidentally like cuts himself, and he's super freaked out about it.
Yeah, she has to take care of him because he's like freaking out about the blood, but not when it's somebody else's.
I love how crazy that is. I really love this movie, and I really think that like it's super, super low budget. It is like I don't know how low budget. I couldn't find out exactly how low budget it was, but it's also like it's a filmmaker's very first film. The director of this movie, he said that he attended a 6-week crash course at NYU, and that's all the training he had prior to filming this. And he just had some friends that he helped him work on it, and he just made this fucking movie. And I think it's awesome. He somehow got like the special effects crew, like they worked on Hellraiser.
Oh yeah.
And so like that's why like it actually does have some pretty good practical effects for how low budget it is. And I know there's a sound effect actually about the scene you were talking about earlier with the lamp kill. Excuse me, but with the lamp kill, I know the sound engineer working on it said it was like the hardest sound effect he ever had to make to get that sound right, and he did a good job. It sounds nice and squishy and gross. I like it.
There's also a scene where he rips off somebody's face, and the sound effects during that are pretty cool.
Yeah, he does. That's the first kill in the movie. He like comes up from behind a guy and he rips his fucking face off, and then he like punches them through the back, and like you see his hand with the heart come out the front.
Isn't there also it's supposed to be Christian Brando, apparently?
That's right. Marlon Brando's son is the first guy killed. And I didn't know that. That's something you dug up that I didn't even hear in the commentary. Yeah.
But apparently he hates Hollywood, so I don't know why he would have done that. But,
Yeah, it was Christian Brando apparently was the guy who gets his face ripped off, I think.
Allegedly.
I mean, it's
trust everything
on IMDb, but that's not always reliable either. But I mean, I don't know. This movie you can definitely see some budget limitations. Like there's definitely a lot of shots where I think they're probably using some sort of, it's not like a super intense wide angle lens, but it's like something like that where they're trying to make, some of the rooms look bigger. And because of that, like it's just a stationary camera where only the center of the frame is in focus, and there's stuff happening on the outskirts of that center that's like completely blurry, and there's some budgetary like amateur feeling kind of stuff in there. But
for me, it adds to the appeal.
Yeah, I really, really love this movie, and I'm so fucking happy it exists. I think if you're a Friday the 13th fan, like you need to seek this out because you are gonna get a kick out of it. And it's also it's very self-aware.
It's so self-aware.
Like it's kind of like meta. If you want to say that, like long before Scream and stuff came out, because there is this whole like narrative in it where like the Jackson character knows that there are movies being made about him in the movie, and he has all these, there's like these scenes where he's looking right into the camera and he's just like, what is the point of this? It all feels so pointless, and just stuff like that too.
One of my favorite lines is, "Don't run, you'll only trip, and then I'll be right there." Told you.
Yeah, so he starts like explaining, like later in the movie when he's going after his victim, he starts like explaining to them what's going to happen. And I know exactly what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And he's going after this girl that he's going to kill. And she's like, yeah, you can try to run, but you're going to run into a branch or trip after 10 feet. And he says, your fate is sealed just like mine.
Yeah.
So like his fate is sealed to always be a killer, just like these other, teens' fates are to die at his hands, apparently. But yeah, I mean, super, super low budget. Like I said, the guy attended a 6-week course at NYU, made this movie. He said he thinks it was filmed in about 18 days. A lot of the details of this seem to be kind of blurry to even the director. He says he thinks it was shot on Super 16, but he wasn't entirely sure. I mean, it looks like it's 16 to me from my limited knowledge, but
I wouldn't even be able to guess.
But yeah, Unmasked Part 25, also known as The Hand of Death or The Hand of Death Part 25. I can't recommend it enough. If you're at all a fan of Friday the 13th movies, like I think you're going to get just a huge kick out of this kind of like alternate universe, alternate timeline, Jason.
I agree. Definitely worth checking out.
But yeah, we're not going to spoil it for you. If you want to find out if Jason or Jackson, God damn it, I really can't even when I try. These movies, it's so obvious what this movie is, and I can't help but just call him Jason. But if you want to find out if Jackson finds true love or can just never break the cycle of his old violent ways, check out Unmasked Part 25. Buy the Blu-ray from Vinegar Syndrome as we did, because I will watch it many more times. I know that.
Yes, many, many, many more.
All right. Well, moving on here. And since we're on the topic of serial killers finding love, we're going to move into our second film here. And what's this one called, Aubrie?
Psychos in Love.
We are psychos in love, we can't help ourselves. Psychos in love, we are psychos in love. Never felt this way about anyone else, we are psychos. Psychos in love, cause we are psychos in love, we can't help ourselves. Psychos in love, we are psychos in love. Never felt this way about anyone else, we are psychos. Psychos in love.
Fuck yeah. We like the 80s. So this movie is from 1987, directed by an American director, Gorman Bechard. And I got to be fully honest, I'm not as prepared to talk about this as maybe the other movies we're covering, because we did a swerve and we decided very last minute to talk about this movie because, in all honesty, it is just a lot more fun than the other movies we were originally planning to do.
Yeah, we were going to talk about Let Me In and Let the Right One In, and we kept trying, but it was too dark.
So don't get me wrong. Like, I really, really like those movies, particularly the Swedish one, Let the Right One In from 2008. The American remake that came out 2 years after it, Let Me In, directed by Matt Reeves, who I think most people more recently know as the director of The Batman. But they're very, very, very similar movies. They're like 90% the same. I do not think they're shot for shot the same like some people will claim they are. There definitely are some subtle differences and some cool fucking differences, actually. There's a car crash scene in particular in the American one that I love. It's like one of my favorite scenes in either of these movies. It has like Blue Oyster Cult, the I'm burning for you playing, and then the camera is just like stationary in the back seat as this guy is trying to get away out of a precarious situation, and you're in this car in the back seat, and this car, it goes backwards for a while, and then it kind of flips around, and then it literally starts flipping over and over and over, but this camera is stationary in the back seat, and you're just watching the people bounce around in the car, and there's glass everywhere, and man, I love it. But I will say that's the best part of the 2010 remake of that movie. Like, if you're going to watch one of those movies, definitely watch the Swedish one.
Let the Right One In from 2010. I agree.
No,
or 2008.
Yeah.
2008.
2010 is Let Me In, the other one. But,
well, I knew what I was trying to say.
But anyway, I mean, we really do like these movies, but I think the spirit of this podcast is just, we want to focus more on like campy, fun horror, not super serious, heavy, fucking dark subject matter that can be found in, more artsy modern horror movies.
Yeah, it just wasn't our vibe.
Yeah, we do like a lot of that stuff. Don't get us wrong. I'm not saying we're never going to talk about it, but we were trying to record something about those movies, and it was just kind of a bummer to talk about. So we swerved, and we're going to talk about something a lot more fun, because I had an absolute blast watching Psychos in Love.
I really loved it. It is an anti-grape movie.
It is very anti-grape. So if you are sensitive to grape, yes, grapes as in the fruit, if you are sensitive to grape rights and equality, don't dive into this movie, because this is literally, I think this is a delightful little film about two people, Joe and Kate, meeting and falling in love due to their mutual obsession with murder and of course, their irrational, extreme hatred of grapes.
If you like grapes, you might die at the end of a date with Joe.
It's true. So this is actually pretty similar to Unmasked Part 25, which we were talking about before, where this guy Joe is a serial killer. He really enjoys killing, and
he owns a strip club.
He does own a strip club where he just bartends and hangs out, and it's like a super tiny little strip club. There's only like one dancer working at a time, and so there's some other funny characters that we'll get around to in there as well. But this guy is a serial killer, and he, like Jackson in Unmasked Part 25, starts, to question, there has to be more to this. There has to be more to life than just killing and hating grapes. Maybe I should try to fall in love.
And just the right person comes and sits at the bar. And she doesn't want to fuck. She just wants to drink. Her quote. Literally, she says that as she sits down.
That's true. Yeah.
So they end up talking for a while, and grapes come up, and they both hate grapes. They even go into the same little spiel about it. It's hilarious.
Yeah. It's the weirdest fucking thing ever. This hatred of grapes that these two people have, and how it is a plot point throughout the entire movie. They even put it in a song that's featured in the movie. It's a really fucking wacky, really low budget movie, but I really, really like this movie. And I think I read that it was shot for like $75,000 or something. I could be wrong. Again, I didn't research this as much as I would have liked to, because it's kind of a last minute swerve, but it was shot in 16 millimeter, found a little bit of life on, VHS. I think Empire Pictures, I read, released it at one point. But yeah, this movie, it's pretty much a straight up comedy. There are some very brutal kind of kills in the movie that you see, actually quite a few of them, but the whole tone of the movie is very silly, very playful, and very self-aware in some kind of weird ways.
Yeah, it definitely has some meta horror to it.
And I don't even know if it really ever explains, because there are parts of the movie where it definitely seems like there's like a documentary film crew or something following these people around, but it's just kind of random, and they'll just kind of randomly look into the camera and say something. There's one scene in particular where they're just bobbing and weaving around a boom mic that's in the way.
They're fighting. They're having an argument. She even rolls her eyes in the middle of it.
Yeah, and I don't remember exactly what they were arguing about. I don't remember if this is that point in the movie or not, but I know there's one point where they start to get kind of jealous of each other, but I don't think it's jealous in a way of a romantic sexual way. I think they're just jealous that they keep carrying on their killings, and they also want to be involved in the killings, and then they start trying to do killings together.
Oh, that's one of my favorite parts. They decided to start doing the killings together, and there is a running joke where they have to kill the same person 6 times. It's ridiculous.
She just keeps coming back. She's just not quite dead, and she just keeps coming back, and then they kill her again, and then he'll just turn around and pour a drink, and then you'll see her get up behind him. And this is definitely one of those movies that takes a joke and just keeps pounding it and pounding it and pounding it until it just gets funnier and funnier, because they just fucking stick with it.
Great dad jokes. One of my favorites is there's a scene where he is cutting up one of the bodies after he's killed them, and there's just a leg laying on the table, and they're making comments about the leg, and he's like, you could say I defeated her. It's hilarious. I laughed really hard.
I know there's a whole bit when they're in a French restaurant, and they can't understand what the waiter is saying, and he's trying to ask them if they would like a cheese board, but he thinks they're saying cheese bird.
Oh yeah. He keeps asking them if they want the cheese board, and they're like cheese bird. What are you talking about?
Cheese bird.
What kind of bird are you offering me?
Oh man. There's another part where so I don't know if we ever fully explained that yes, both of these people are serial killers individually, and then they meet and they discover they hate grapes, and they also love killing, and they have an agreement that they can continue on killing, but their killing kind of revolves them around like luring someone of the opposite sex back to their place or a hotel or something. And so that's why they eventually start to get jealous and they start trying to do their killings together.
It's almost like they're going on dates to find the right person to kill. In a way, it kind of seems like they're going on these dates to kill people, essentially. She also really hates when anyone talks about the weather.
Oh, the weather. Yeah, that is like her big...
That's a trigger for her.
It definitely is. She hates grapes and she hates it when guys talk about the weather. But to her defense, the guys that she ends up killing are kind of creeps.
They are. She's a manicurist, and so she likes to kill them with like little nail clippers and things like that.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, they are creeps. I hate those men.
Most men are. Honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's another kill scene in this where Joe is doing his fucking thing and he's like pouring a cocktail, but he's trying to put poison in it.
Oh, yeah. It's like a bunch of powdered sugar is what it looks like.
It's like some kind of powdered poison, and he has just like a normal martini glass and he just keeps putting more and more and more, and then he literally just dumps this whole thing of powder in there and just like kind of stirs it up and gives it to her, and she just looks at it like, what the fuck?
So that scene's weird because remember how they hate grapes and they won't drink it in any fashion?
Yeah.
That was wine.
Was that wine?
Yeah. It was a wine bottle, and then it was like the color of wine. I didn't mention it.
For some reason, I remembered it being like a martini glass in my head, but maybe.
It was a martini glass, but it was a wine bottle, and it was wine-colored liquid. A rosé.
Well, I'm colorblind, so I don't know if I would have been able to tell anyway. I saw a martini glass with liquid in it, and I didn't think Joe fucked with grapes, so I didn't even cross my mind.
I was like, maybe this is something they didn't catch in post-production.
But I don't know. This is just a really fun, goofy fucking movie.
Oh, the whole movie, there's also that guy that's killing people across town. He's the plumber. He plumbs.
That's right. There is another killer across town that they eventually have to call over to unclog their sink because of all the parts of human remains and going down the drain.
Oh.
But yeah, this guy, there's a plumber who is also like a killer, and his name is Herman, and yeah, he's a cannibal and he likes to eat people's fingers with like ketchup on plates like French fries.
The plates and the way that they do the food he makes from the body parts after is pretty funny. I liked the hand and the bunch of broccoli and stuff like that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. God, there's so many just good things, and I took down so many notes of just things that made me laugh out fucking loud. Like, there's a scene where, after a post-coital scene, if you will, where they're laying in bed and, she's doing the normal movie thing where she's like, that was wonderful. And he says something like, as a kid, I used to do push-ups with my tongue.
Oh, I loved that one. That was a great note. So many stupid jokes. The jokes were on fire with that one.
At one point, they get into VHS tapes because, they're trying to get hip with the times here in 1987. And they realize how many VHS tapes they can get that features, movies and stories about serial killers and mass murderers. And they kind of at one point decide to stop maybe seeing if they could stop killing, because they're like, why go out and kill when we could just watch it all at home instead?
Oh yeah, and then they take the videos home and they're opening up the boxes and they start pulling the film out and just looking at the film one little...
Yeah, they're pulling the VHS tapes apart and looking at the tape inside one frame at a time. They don't ever actually put it in a fucking VCR and watch it on a TV. It just shows them like pulling the actual tape out and looking at these tiny little pictures. It's great.
That was one of my favorite parts, just watching them and describing what they see in the little teeny picture, and then they basically ruin the tape.
Yeah. Well, and the scene where they go to the video store is hilarious too, because they just have this massive pile of tapes and it shows like the horror section right after they go in there, and there's only like 2 or 3 left on the shelves. And the guy checking them out is just like, all right, Friday the 13th 1, Friday the 13th 2, Friday the 13th 3,
Texas
Friday the 13th 4.
Yeah, just Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and then every other slasher,
Halloween,
basically.
1, 2, 3, and then like every fucking horror movie, and it just goes on and on and on. So they take those all home so they can just open up the tape and look at the tiny little film.
Oh, we forgot to mention that Herman tries to blackmail them.
Oh, Herman the plumber does try to blackmail them.
Yeah, when he finds the body parts in the drain. Because he opens up the drain and he starts trying to eat the body parts that he finds in it.
Spoiler alert, Aubrie.
Sorry.
You just ruined this movie that's very, very deep and
so
philosophical.
people are really going to be upset about that.
But yeah. Oh yeah. What's up with that rotisserie chicken picnic?
Oh, yeah. What is up with the rotisserie chicken picnic? I do want to do that, though.
So that's one of the guys that Kate meets to kill, isn't it?
Yeah, and he starts eating grapes, and she's like, no, I just want some chicken.
She just wanted her rotisserie chicken picnic. These people are sitting in a park having a picnic with a whole rotisserie chicken, living their best lives.
I mean, that does sound delicious to me.
Yeah, I guess maybe I'm just pissed that I never thought of it myself before, and I was always like, chicken sandwich instead of a whole rotisserie chicken.
Yeah.
I could have been living the fucking high life this whole time.
Right? Just rip the drumstick off. Eat it in the park.
But I don't know. Oh, do you want to talk about Joe's cool bar keyboard musical performance?
Oh, yeah, that music is hilarious. I guess the actor actually did all of that music. What's his name? Something. Carmen.
My internet's not working as quick as I am here. Fuck you, IMDb. What are you doing?
It's
Carmine Capobianco or something.
Yeah, he was the actor that played Joe, and he wrote the music, and he co-wrote the story apparently.
And I think I saw somewhere that the woman Kate was like the director's wife, at least at the time too.
Yeah, I didn't see that in anything that I read, but I didn't get to read as in depth as I would like.
Yeah, but I don't know. There's a scene where Joe just all of a sudden has like a keyboard, and he's working at his shift at his bar, but he just has like a keyboard, and he's putting on like a concert, and he has like the keyboard necktie and everything, and there's so many weird people going in and out of that bar. Like there's this guy with the karate gi.
Yeah, he doesn't speak English throughout the movie. It doesn't say what language he is speaking. It just says like, don't you wish you knew subtitle or had subtitles here?
Yeah, I just like how he keeps coming up like every 20 seconds and getting another beer, and Joe only pours the foamiest fucking beers in town too.
It's Heineken.
It's very clear that Joe never spent real time as a bartender, because he just like pours the beer straight in the glass, and it's literally like half foam every time.
Whenever they order, they come up and they just say 1, and so then he just pours a beer. It's half foam, and he throws it across the bar too. There's beer sliding everywhere.
It's pretty great, but I don't know if there's really much more to say about this, because it really is just like a goofy love story of 2 serial killers meeting and falling in love and hating grapes, and it's a really fucking fun movie. It's probably the best actual love story of the 3 we're talking about.
Yeah, I think you're right about that one.
But yeah, again, this is Psychos in Love from 1987, directed by Gorman, Bechard, and I guess he apparently has a documentary about The Replacements.
Oh, really?
Called Color Me Obsessed, a film about The Replacements. And I like The Replacements a lot, so I definitely want to check that out too. He also has another movie, I think, apparently Psycho's in Love was his second movie, and he has an even more low-budget movie before that called, like, I think it's Disconnected.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, there's a Vinegar Syndrome release of that. There's also a Vinegar Syndrome Blu-ray release of Psychos in Love, which I did not buy. We streamed it on a weird it's called Midnight Pulp or something.
Yeah, some weird Amazon Prime channel.
But yeah, we found it to stream on there, and we got like a free trial or whatever, but I do want to buy the Blu-ray of this because I think this movie is hilarious.
Yeah, it's a very good anti-grape good time.
Yeah. I definitely recommend it if you are somebody who has like an irrational hatred of grapes. But I think that's it.
Yeah. So I guess it's on to our last movie.
Yes. So our last movie, we're talking about Cemetery Man from 1994, directed by Michele Soavi.
Also known as Della Morte dell'Amore.
Death, death, death comes sweeping down. Filthy death, the leering clown. Death on wings, death by surprise. Veiling evil from worldly eyes. Death that's born as life succumbs. While death and love, two kindred drums, beat the time to judgment day. An actor in a passion play. Without beginning, without end. Evermore. Amen.
All right, well, Cemetery Man is the story of Francesco Della Morte, a jaded cemetery caretaker who lives within the ghastly confines of Buffalora Cemetery, along with his simple-minded friend, Nagi.
Aside from their daily tasks of digging graves and hosting funerals, Francesco and Nagi stay busy at night dealing with reanimated corpses that they call returners.
Sending these returners back to their graves is just routine work for Francesco and Nagi. It doesn't seem to bother them much, and they're mostly content living within this macabre little bubble of theirs. They very rarely seem to question or care about what exists beyond it, until a mysterious woman arrives, an entity Francesco can't and won't ever get out of his mind.
And once it appears that she has slipped out of his reach forever, Francesco's whole little world starts to unravel in mysterious and violent ways.
So, yeah, kind of in a little nutshell, that's basically Cemetery Man is... This is not an easy movie to talk about or really sum up, and you really just need to fucking see it and experience it and go on this ride, because there are layers and layers and layers to this thing. And I think discovering everything that's underneath as you peel them away is really part of the fun of this movie. So I don't want to get too deep in the weeds of like the specifics of like some of the twists in this movie and like what I really think is going on, because I really do think that discovery upon multiple watches of this is really a lot of fucking fun.
Oh, yeah. I think the best way to kind of sum this up is this was another movie we picked because we thought, oh, yeah, love story. It's not really a traditional love story in a happily ever after sense. It's a movie about the duality of love and death. And really, I think if you like movies like Evil Dead or you like Twin Peaks, it kind of sums up and feels like both of those in one movie.
Definitely feels a lot like those, maybe a little bit like one of the trailers actually says like Stuart Gordon's Reanimator has a feel like that. There's a tiny bit of Taxi Driver in here,
yeah.
I think too. But this is just a fucking awesome amalgamation of genre films and really a celebration and a loving eulogy to basically the death of Italian horror films.
Yeah, I thought it was really funny the first time I watched it. Second time I watched it, I got something else out of it completely. And I think part of that is being able to understand that it is a love story to Italian horror.
Well, I will admit the very first time we watched this was also on New Year's Eve, and we were kind of drinking and smoking and having ourselves a good time for New Year's Eve. And I definitely liked this movie and found it enjoyable, but I really didn't understand what the fuck was going on, particularly in the second half of it.
Yeah, same. But the second time we watched it, we got to see it in theaters. It was really cool. I think seeing it with a bunch of other people and getting them to laugh at the same parts, because there are a lot of funny parts.
So this is a movie I'd heard about for a really, really long time, but the last, I don't know, like decade or so, it really hasn't been super available in the United States. I think there's like some old DVD copies floating around, and if you have an all-region player, like we don't because we're stupid, I think, you know, there were some foreign copies of it that you could get on Blu-ray, but Severin released this awesome like 4K remastered box set. I think we got it for like their Black Friday sale, and we got it just at the tail end of December, and it took a while, but we got it, and we finally got to watch it on New Year's Eve. But this is actually the same version that they played in the theater, the C Film Center here in Denver. They did like a week-long run of this where they just had a showing a day, but we got to see it in a theater with a bunch of friends. And yeah, I'm really glad we got to see it with like a whole crowd of people that appreciate what it's trying to do, because it really is just such a fucking bizarre but awesome movie.
It's one of my favorites, I think, that I've seen in the last year so far, which I know doesn't seem like a lot, but we've watched over 50 movies for sure.
Oh, yeah. I think we've watched close to 60 so far this year, actually. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the information that I got about this movie all comes from this awesome little booklet that came with the Blu-ray we bought from Severin. And literally, it is just called The Last Great Italian Horror Film. And it is a probably like 40-page or so long essay by a lady named Claire Donner. And there's just a lot of really great and interesting information here about this movie and kind of the parallels she saw between what it's portraying in the film and also just like the lifespan of Italian horror films.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to look at that very much, but it looks really cool. I know it has a lot of really cool pictures in it.
Yeah, they're just, good like production pictures and stuff. But yeah, it's a really, really interesting thing. It has like some good quotes by even like Lucio Fulci and some other filmmakers and stuff in there as well. Yeah, if you like this movie, definitely buy that fucking 4K/Blu-ray set and read this little booklet with it too. I'm kind of sad I didn't get to dive into like some of the commentary tracks and other extras into this. I didn't really have time, but I'm sure there's even more fucking great info about this movie.
It just gives us more to watch and more to enjoy with it later, because I know this is one I'm going to continue to revisit over and over and over again.
And I really just I can't stress enough how actually laugh out loud funny this movie is. This is, I guess I've been saying that a lot because I did say it about both of the other films we covered this episode as well. But man, this movie is so fucking funny. It has such great also just gore zombie kill effects. It and like I said, it just has the whole fucking movie is like a puzzle that you can put together too that makes more and more sense every time you watch it. It really is I wrote a little thing here where I said, this is an existential art house character study disguised as a goofy zombie comedy. You can watch it and enjoy it just as that, but this film has layers and layers and layers you can keep peeling back more and more with every viewing. And I mean, yeah, like I said, the first time we watched it, we definitely just kind of had fun with it as a goofy zombie comedy, but it is about so fucking much more. And like Aubrie said, it's a movie very much about the duality of life and death, and even the Italian name of this movie, Della Morte, Dell'amore, literally means of death, of death, of life, or of life of death. I can't remember exactly the order.
Of death, of love.
Yeah. Of death, of love is literally what Della Morte, Dell'amore even means.
Yeah, I think it's a great movie. I have been singing a stupid song from it for days now.
Never should have gone to the Boy Scout picnic. Never should have gone to the Boy Scout picnic. Yeah, that is, man, that whole scene where that song comes into play in that movie is it's one of the fucking greatest scenes in this whole movie, and just how it takes a bad situation of a girl and her boyfriend getting into a motorcycle accident, and then that causes an accident with a bus that's full of
Boy Scouts and nuns.
And they all end up dying, and they have this giant funeral, and there's just this fucking crowd of people just singing this song about how they never should have gone to the Boy Scout picnic.
One of the kids that's buried is buried with his motorcycle, which that's one of my favorite things to happen in movies.
Yeah. Oh man, and because eventually, when he becomes as the zombies are called in this movie, the returners, and when that guy becomes one, it's fucking awesome too, because I think he has part of the handlebar sticking in his head, and I think it's the blinker going off behind one of his eyes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fucking awesome too. But
the practical effects are really cool in this movie.
Yeah, they really, really are well done. And there's such cool little things from just like, not even just like the zombies and stuff, but like all the little like floating balls of like blue fire
Yeah,
and like
the
that
little
fucking
ember lights.
skeleton, like the death thing in there is so
Yeah.
cool looking. And this new 4K restoration, you can see some little wires and stuff going on, but like, man, like watching an old VHS copy of this like in the 90s, I don't think there's any way you would have noticed any of that shit. I mean, it still looks fantastic either way, but but yeah, the 4K restoration, you can see a little more of how they did it.
I actually think that the setting is really beautiful too. They used a weird old cemetery that was no longer being used for the set.
Well, there's actually 2 different cemeteries that they use, and one was for daytime and one was for nighttime as well, which I found pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's really pretty. I wonder if how do you say that word? Ossuary?
Ossuary, I think. I'm not sure. I didn't know what the fuck that was before we saw this movie.
This movie taught me something new.
But yeah, there's a lady in this movie who's very turned on by ossuaries, which I guess is just some weird little like crypt where they store bones and parts of people. I don't know. I'm an idiot.
Yeah, I don't know much about that. I wish I knew more, but now I have another thing to study up on, I guess.
But yeah, I mean, this movie, like we said before we started talking about it at all, it's directed by Michele Soavi, who we definitely brought up in our Giallo episode last month because he directed Stage Fright, which is one of the movies we watched. He was also the killer
in A Blade in the Dark.
In A Blade in the Dark, where he was collaborating with Lamberto Bava, and he actually did that another time as well because he was some sort of assistant director on Demons as well as A Blade in the Dark. But he cut his teeth working with, fucking heavy hitters of Italian horror cinema. He was an assistant to Dario Argento for Tenebrae and Phenomena and Opera. At least 2 of those we also talked about in our episode last month.
As you can tell, we really like Dario Argento.
He also worked with Joe D'Amato, the guy who did like Anthropophagus. I think it's either Anthropophagus or Anthropophagus. Honestly, I don't know how to say that word. But and Absurd. I'm not really sure exactly which Joe D'Amato films he helped out with, but he also was some sort of an assistant to Terry Gilliam on a movie or 2, which is really fucking interesting. But you can definitely see like all these people he's worked with and learned from, like Argento and Terry Gilliam and Joe D'Amato and Lamberto Bava. Like you really understand like why Cemetery Man is such a fucking well-crafted film. And I should say it's like, as the first 2 movies we were talking about, where you almost kind of have to be a fan of very low budget kind of horror movies, Cemetery Man isn't like this at all. Like this is an exceptionally well made film.
Yeah, it definitely had a bigger budget. Although I wouldn't say it had a huge budget.
Well, I think it just had people with a lot more experience.
That too. I mean, you can see that with everything, every little detail of it. It's really pretty to look at as well. If you look at just the screenshots of the movie and things, it's a masterpiece to look at.
Yeah. And I mean, this movie is also, it's very intentionally like a love letter to all of the different eras of Italian horror films.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of, everything.
It starts off, like a very gothic, cemetery, spooky kind of vibe, not that unlike, Italian horror films from like the 60s kind of feel. The story ends up evolving into almost like a murder mystery, what is reality, what is delusion kind of thing that is not unlike Giallo. And then it gets into even like uglier, just kind of like ruthless. Like the brutality is not that unlike something like New York Ripper or something that came, later after Giallo's from Fulci.
Yeah, that happens after Death comes to Francesco and says, if you don't want the dead coming back to life, why don't you just kill the living?
Yeah, and that's honestly kind of about like the halfway turn of this movie. Like the first half of this movie is basically just Francesco and Nagi living in this cemetery, waiting for the people to come back to life, which usually is after 7 days, but then the timing of that gets thrown off. Again, this mysterious woman ends up coming into the situation, and that throws a lot of wrenches into the cogs as well.
Time is not linear in this movie, I don't think. It seems like it just moves around a bit. And I think that has been one thing a lot of people complained about online with it. But I after watching it again, like that about it.
Well, and like I said, I don't want to give anything away because I really do think that like I really do think there's a lot to be said for discovering this film and its twists and turns, and like, you know, every time you watch it, like filling in another piece of that puzzle. I really do think that's part of the fun of this. But like, I definitely think that like not all the time and not all the things that happen in this film is linear. That makes a lot more sense once you've seen this movie a couple times and kind of figure it out.
Yeah, I definitely think that this is not a movie you watch just once. You watch it once and it's hilarious and you'll have a good time. But the more you watch it, the more you'll enjoy it, and the deeper you'll get an appreciation for it.
Yeah, and there's such a like the main protagonist in this movie, Francesco Della Morte, who's played by Rupert Everett. He is so fucking good, and just like what I found interesting researching this movie is just like how vital Rupert Everett really was to the version of this film that we actually got to see. This movie was almost a lot of other different things.
Like what?
So apparently like they had like were trying to shop this movie around and get some money to get it made for a while. But apparently like they were just having trouble with studios biting onto it. And at one point I know like the screenwriter like had actually tried to pitch this story as like a more conventional giallo movie, but Rupert Everett refused to do it. He basically just said he's not doing that version of it. He's only doing the original version of it that he read and signed off on. And then I guess there was also an American company that had offered to give them money to actually make this film, but it was conditional, and they wanted the main character to be played by Matt Dillon instead of Rupert Everett.
That wouldn't have worked.
I could not fucking imagine this movie with Matt Dillon and not Rupert Everett.
Well, isn't the original source material for the story, isn't it a comic book or book series called Dylan Dog?
Exactly, yeah. So this is kind of a comic book movie. And yeah, Francesco Della Morte, he first appeared as a cameo in this Dylan Dog comic book series. It's an Italian comic book series, or they call him fumetti or fumetto, and they call him that due to comparing the speech bubbles to little puffs of smoke, apparently.
Oh, that's kind of awesome.
But there was a book of the same name by the author Tiziano Sclavi, and he actually had an idea to write like a book or a story about Francesco Della Morte before that Dylan Dog comic book series came out, but it never really worked out. And then once that came out and it was super successful, then he ended up writing this character of Francesco Della Morte a lot further.
Didn't they kind of base him on, what's his name, Rupert?
Yeah, and yeah, the Dylan Dog character in the series actually was based on the actor Rupert Everett, and he apparently had no idea of this when he signed on to do this movie either.
It's kind of an Inception like fact for it.
But yeah, I mean, his performance is absolutely great in it. I really could not imagine if they had fucking Matt Dillon in this movie and not Rupert Everett.
It would not work.
And I also just couldn't imagine if it was like a traditional giallo, and it's so much more interesting, like what we actually got. And I'm so happy that they stuck to their guns and just didn't fucking make it until the situation was right.
I mean, just like giallos, it is kind of a horny movie.
It is a very horny movie. And so I guess we'll talk a little bit about like the main love character in the movie that Francesco Della Morte is falling for. And her name is just Lee, which is literally just the Italian word for she. And this is a woman who kind of appears in several forms throughout the movie. And again, the more you watch this movie, the more you'll understand why. But they really do start to blur the lines of reality and delusion a lot more, like once this character is introduced. And every subsequent time she comes into the picture, I feel like Francesco's mind is just spiraling more and more out of control.
Yeah, there's one actress who plays multiple characters in this movie, Anna Falchi. But yeah, she, what's interesting too is the very first time you see her in the movie, it's actually her real voice. And then the subsequent times she's in the movie, there are actually different actresses dubbing their voices over her too. And again, this is very intentional to try to blur the lines here between, you know, reality and what is happening in Francesca's head. Yeah, it's this is where things become a little bit confusing, and I think sometimes it's better to just watch it to kind of understand it. I don't want to give too much away around her character or who she is or anything else because there's not a lot explained, but it's more intriguing.
Yeah, and I guess like the other like third character that has a huge part in this movie is again, it's this character Nagi, and this is like a very adult character, but very simple-minded. He basically has the mind of a child, and he lives on this cemetery property with Francesco and helps him take care of the zombies, or returners as they call them, whenever they come back, and do other tasks around the graveyard.
Yeah, he's kind of the assistant, the simple-minded, happy assistant. He's there. He helps sweep up the leaves and dig the graves. Just
eats massive piles of just like spaghetti noodles and ice cream and like weird ass shit thrown together. It's really odd, all the stuff he fucking watches. And what's that TV show he's always watching?
It's like
War Blob?
War Blob. Yeah.
War Blob. Yeah. I fucking love that.
He just sits there and watches it and eats in his chair for a while.
While Francesco just makes like snide comments like, "You really are disgusting when you eat Nagi."
The only word that Nagi says is nah.
Nah. Yeah, basically. But this character Nagi, he was played by a French actor, Francois Haji Lazaro, and he appeared in more than 20 films, but he was actually kind of more well known for being like an alternative rock / punk musician. He was actually considered in France to be a French punk icon.
That is awesome.
Yeah, he had this band called Pigalle, Pigalle, and I guess that's just like a neighborhood in Paris. It's like kind of like a red light district neighborhood, I guess. That's what that band is named after.
That's kind of cool.
And he had another band called, I don't speak French, so bear with me here, but I think it's Les Garçons Bouchers. And he founded a French independent record label called Boucherie Productions, and that ran from 1985 to 2001. So he had a pretty fucking good run with that.
Jeremy, you're letting your ancestors down without knowing how to speak French.
Yeah, I guess so, but whatever. And sadly, actually, exactly 1 year ago today, as we're recording this on February 25th, he actually died 1 year ago today, February 25th, 2023. He was 66.
That's sad.
It is sad. Rupert Everett, very much alive. I know he was just in that fucking new Ridley Scott Napoleon movie. I'm pretty sure he's like I think he's one of the villains in it. I don't know. I haven't seen Napoleon yet, and I don't know much about the actual movie, but I'm pretty sure he's like one of the villains in it.
I know a Napoleon fact.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he has he had property in New Orleans, and you can still eat at it. It's a restaurant now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But anyway. Yeah.
That doesn't matter. That's not about Cemetery Man.
But yeah, again, I know we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but this is kind of two movies, and one is just like a silly, straightforward zombie movie, but then about halfway through the movie is when things really, really start to get fucking weird. And the first even couple times I saw this movie, I really had no fucking idea. But then just researching it more to do this podcast and talking to some friends about it, I definitely do think I have a much bigger grasp of what's going on here. And it's
layered.
Again, we've said that a million times.
Yep.
But yeah, I don't really know how else to say it.
Nope.
What else do I fucking love about this movie? Oh, there is some weirdness, I guess we will say, with the love interest of Nagi.
Oh, yeah. Nagi falls in love with the mayor's daughter.
Well, yeah, and she's pretty young, and Nagi's definitely an adult, even though he is very, very simple-minded. So that's a little weird, but I don't know. It doesn't really come off creepy or anything in the movie just because Nagi is so innocent and childlike, and he honestly he literally just falls in love with just her head,
well,
too.
He obviously has love at first sight with her. When he sees her the first time, he pukes on her in a very Stan Marsh kind of way.
It is a very Stan Marsh puking situation.
Oh, he puked on me. How sweet.
Yeah.
That's literally how she says it.
And that girl doesn't have a whole lot of interest in Nagi when she first meets him, but it's only shortly after that where she hops on to motorcycle with her boyfriend, and that goes back to the scene where we talked about earlier, where there's a giant crazy bus crash, motorcycle crash, and a fun song.
Never should have gone to the Boy Scout
Exactly.
picnic.
But yeah, once the mayor's daughter is buried, Nagi anticipates her awakening after 7 days and eventually just can't wait and busts her out of the grave himself and puts her head inside of a TV and just has a grand old time with her while he's able to.
I took your head off and put it in my TV set.
And I do mean that very innocently too. I do I do mean like having a grand old time with her is just like a companion. It's really not like sexual or weird.
No, they're just hanging out and singing songs like nursery rhymes together and stuff like that. It's actually kind of cute.
Man, and there's so many just good one-liners in this too. Like one of my favorite quotes is Francesco at one point talking about how he says I've read 2 books in my life, or I've read 2 books in my entire life. One of them I never finished, and the other one is a phone book.
Oh, he loves his phone book. Every time somebody dies, he crosses their name out of it.
He does, yeah. That's like his highest form of entertainment. He gets angry when Nagi tries to throw away the old phone books because he says they're classics.
My favorite is I'd give my life to be dead.
I'd give my life to be dead.
It's perfect. It's a great line.
Yeah, it's some sad boy shit.
Yeah,
for
but
sure.
It's sad boy shit said in a funny way. That's my favorite.
Yeah, but I guess this is a hard movie to try to just like put a bow on and stop talking about, and because I feel like there's so much more that needs to be talked about with this movie, but I also don't want to fucking give anything away because it's so fun to just discover it yourself. But yeah.
I think it's one of those things where I almost recommend you watch it once just to have fun and then watch it a second time to dissect it.
Yeah, at least a second time.
At least.
But yeah, I mean, like I said, the very first time we saw this movie, I just, goofy zombie movie. It's New Year's Eve. We're partying. And then I just thought it was a movie about like a love interest that kept escaping our protagonist. But it's really not a love story at all. It really is more about the duality of love and death. And also, I think it's a lot more of a story about ego. I think it is a story about obsession. It's possibly a story about infidelity. I think it's a story about impotence.
Yeah, it is about impotence. I think it's also a story about searching for love in all the wrong places.
But again, I do think like this movie was also very intentionally meant to parallel everything that we came to know and love about Italian horror cinema through kind of its inception up until the point where this movie came out in 1994.
After that, they all kind of turned into just TV shows, and that was more the focus of what happened with the Italian film industry.
And so there's some very symbolic things within Cemetery Man, and I think maybe there's 2 things in particular that I think are very symbolic. There's a puzzle in the movie that is literally a puzzle of a human skull. And Francesco is constantly trying to put together this puzzle. And when Nagi shows any interest in it, he's like, oh, this is the hardest puzzle in the world. You would never be able to figure this out. But then Nagi does figure it out very quickly.
He breaks it so Francesco doesn't know that he figured it out because he was like, oh, he can't know that I figured it out before him.
And I think that's kind of like the perfect thing to have in this movie, because I do think that's very much like, I think some people can watch this movie and fully understand everything it's trying to say the first time they see it, but I think a lot of other people, it's going to take you time and time again, and I think that puzzle's in there to show you that it is kind of intentionally a fucking puzzle. The other item I wanted to talk about is the snow globe.
Oh, yeah, the snow globe effect.
Well, because this movie literally starts and ends with our 2 main characters, Francesco and Nagi, within this snow globe. And I do think that this is very intentionally there to symbolize this whole world that they have crafted within Italian horror cinema, and how everything they've done and everything they love exists within this little bubble, and it couldn't have really existed anywhere else like that outside of the bubble. And they can keep trying to retread everything that's happening inside that little snow globe as much as they want, but eventually they're going to meet the literal end of their road, in which Francesco and Nagi do reach a literal end of the road at the end of this movie. And I do think this is very intentional. It is a very intentional play on what happened to Italian horror cinema.
I don't think that gives
talk.
anything away either, so don't worry, that is not a true spoiler.
But to just wrap up that exact thought, I do want to read a direct quote from the screenwriter, Gianni Romoli. And again, this comes from that little essay booklet titled The Last Great Horror Film by Claire Donner. But there is a quote in here by the screenwriter. And he says, Della Morte dell'Amore was quite consciously the point of no return for Italian horror. In fact, I believe it has somehow become the final chapter for Italian horror of a certain type. Della Morte dell'Amore is the tombstone of Italian horror, but not in a negative sense. All that has been done so far is within Della Morte dell'Amore, and it is Italian horror's funeral.
That's beautiful. That's a really good way to sum it up.
So again, while this really isn't a story, a traditional love story between like a man and a woman, there's definitely little bits and pieces of that in here. It isn't that, but it is definitely a love letter to Italian horror films.
It's still a love tale.
It is in its way. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that we visited 3 really different movies, all of them with different elements of love. Love is complicated, and it has very varied meanings.
Absolutely. And again, I'm really, really sorry to anybody if you were really, really looking forward to us talking about Let the Right One In and Let Me In. Again, we really do fucking love those movies, but I think we just want to keep this more lighthearted. We want to talk about the kinds of genre horror movies that we could laugh around about and giggle about and just find absurd and funny more than we want to get into real deep, dark subject matter.
I still highly recommend you check them out. And if you're only going to watch one of them, watch Let the Right One In, it from Sweden in 2008. And reiterating that.
I keep fucking forgetting that there's a TV series too, which I know nothing about.
Yeah.
But
I feel like I'd have to watch that to talk about it too. There's too much media around it now.
I don't even care. I don't want to watch the TV series, honestly. But again, yeah, we talked a lot about briefly about a lot of quote love movies, but yeah, maybe they're not so much that, but the main 3 films we covered again: Unmasked Part 25, Psychos in Love, and Cemetery Man. Do yourself a favor, get some fucking pizza, popcorn, couple beers, some friends, put on any fucking one of these movies, and like I really think you're gonna have a great time. Unmasked Part 25 and Psychos in Love, you do have to be kind of tuned into the world of ultra low budget kind of movies.
And those 2 are harder to find.
But Cemetery Man, anybody can watch and appreciate that movie. It's fucking beautiful. Like, I mean, another thing I wanted to get into, but I forgot, is like the actual cinematographer for Cemetery Man. He worked on like Apocalypse Now. He worked on the fucking Popeye movie with what's Shelley Duvall and
Robin Williams.
Yeah, the Robert Altman one. And I mean, so that person knows what the fuck they're doing, and that's why Cemetery Man is so fucking beautiful to watch as well. But honestly, like a super, super well-made movie Cemetery Man is. So like, if you're at all put off by the idea of like ultra low budget horror movies, start with Cemetery Man of these 3, but I personally don't think you can go wrong with any of them.
It's also available on Shudder right now if you have Shudder.
Absolutely. Yeah, I guess the only thing left to say is we're gonna get into March now, and God help us, we have decided what we're doing for that episode. What are we doing for that episode?
We are watching all of the Leprechaun movies.
All of them.
All of them.
I believe there's 8. I think I've seen maybe 4 of them, like 3 or 4. I've seen Leprechaun in the Hood a whole bunch, and I've seen the original. I think I've seen 3 and 4, but I'm not sure, but I don't know.
I haven't watched any of them.
You haven't seen any of them?
No, I've seen scenes, but I've never sat down and actually watched a full Leprechaun movie.
I couldn't quite remember if we ever watched the first one together or not, but I guess we really haven't.
No.
So, oh boy. Well, I will say these movies aren't great. This isn't really a franchise I particularly love, but I'm kind of just interested in just like watching all of them and fucking laughing about them.
Look, the last time we did this, I ended up becoming a huge fan of the franchise.
Oh, Fast and Furious.
Fast and Furious.
Man, I wish there was like I hope Leprechaun gets into like a big crazy race in one of these movies. That'd be pretty badass.
Oh, I hope so.
I mean, I know he hangs out with like Ice-T and like gets high and stuff, but I don't think he goes Fast and Furious, but that'd be fucking dope.
Well, I'm hoping for some good car accidents.
Yeah, I mean, fucking Rock will show up and help him get to the end of a rainbow real quick, I guess. I don't know.
All right. Well, I guess we should wrap this up. Let these nice people get on with their days.
Yeah. Thanks so much for sticking around. This is a long episode. We're still fucking working on this. We're figuring this out. We're trying not to sound like too big of idiots, but we're probably not succeeding, but I don't really care. We're having fun. But once again, my name is Jeremy.
And I'm Aubrie.
And thanks for checking out the Technical Difficulties podcast.